What is a red flag from an employer that people might not immediately recognize as a red flag? Had an interview somewhere they offered 20 to 23 starting. Being new in this field, when they asked how much I was expecting to be paid, I said, well, you guys are offering 20 to 23 starting, and being new in the field, I think 20 would be good. Their response was, oh, well, that's kind of a red flag for us. Usually, when someone starts with us, they'll say, I'll take $17 until I can prove to you that I'm worth the $20, so you'll see why we're hesitant. My response? Then why would you offer $20 at your low end? I didn't get a call back. Trying to rush a decision out of you once the offer is made. I once interviewed with a company where I would have been relocating across the country to work for them. There were 3 rounds of interviews, and they left me completely in the dark for weeks on end between each round before inviting me to the next round within just a few days of when the interview would take place. After the final interview, it was over a month of silence from them until they made an offer, but told me I had less than 24 hours to let them know my decision. I would have been moving 2,000 miles away from home to a place I had never been or even seen before. Interviews were completely virtual. They wanted me to start 6 days after the offer had been made. When I asked them if there was any flexibility for me to have more time to think it over or have more time to move out there, they said no. They needed the decision the next day, and if I accepted, I would be starting in less than a week. I declined the offer. Anything the manager says in the interview that doesn't line up with the job description. Yeah, we posted it's a manager level position, but this is actually a coordinator role. Yeah, the description says travel is 25%, but it might be closer to 50, it just depends. We did post it as a remote job, but we prefer people to be in office X days a week. Yeah, we phrase it that way in the job description because corporate says we have to. All of those are red flags. Anything a company is vague about should be a red flag. I always ask the question, why is this role open? Is it a new role or am I replacing someone? Why did that person leave? This really helps you seeing their reaction, and if they look nervous, it's because the person who left did it because they were not happy. I also like asking how senior my team members are. If there's no one there more than 2 years, I would also be concerned. Final question, as I work in sales, I always ask, what's the KPIs and how many are actually hitting their quarterly and annual target? This also reveals if they set their targets too high, and you can expect to enter a grim working culture where you're never good enough and can always do better. Last one, I like asking about how they are working to establish a team culture as well, since this will tell you a lot if people at work are friends or just there to do their job. I went on an interview. They had me wait in the lobby. In the 5 minutes I was sitting there, 3 employees walked past me. The first just looked at me and laughed. The second said, leave. Leave while you can. The third made the sign of the cross at me. Later, during the interview, the hiring manager showed me the Zen room, which was a quiet room you got to go to for 10 minutes when you got too stressed out. I was offered the job. I declined. Edit. They walked by separately at different times. You had to ask permission to use the Zen room. This is such a good question. Here are some thoughts, and for context, I've started several companies, hired a lot of people, and consequently spent a lot of time thinking about how to develop positive cultures. The CEO, boss, whatever drives a conspicuously expensive car. I can elaborate why this is a tell if anyone cares. If it's a private or family company, do a Google search for company name defendant and company name plaintiff. If the company has been sued or is in the habit of suing others, that can be a red flag. Although something there are legit reasons for either, but it's something worth paying attention to. If, when you are asked to come in for an interview, you are not treated with total respect for your time, for example, if you find yourself waiting for extended periods for an interview because so-and-so is in a really important meeting. Similarly, if you are not offered at least water and or coffee if you're in for several interviews. I once interviewed at a place for 7 straight hours with no break, no food, not even a glass of water. Fortunately, I wasn't offered the job as it was at Michael Milken's firm, before he went to prison. If the company brings alcohol into the office for end-of-the-week sessions on a regular basis, I know they can be fun, but it's a stupendously bad idea for all kinds of reasons. And if leadership hasn't figured that out, then I'd think twice before joining. If when you're visiting the company for the first time and you pass someone in the hallway, do they smile and acknowledge your presence with a nod or maybe a hello, or do they ignore you? It's a small thing, but very telling about the workplace culture. Similarly, do people seem healthy and energized or gray-faced and tired? Any bait and switch deviations from representations made during the recruiting process versus actual terms and conditions. If it's a job in a manufacturing or distribution facility, is it messy or tidy? Messy, cluttered facilities are indicative of poor management. Plus, they can be dangerous. As others have noted, any BS about, oh, people like to work late, or stuff like that used as pressure to get you to put in extra hours. Last, pay attention to your gut feel. If something feels off, probably is. They get visibly and vocally freaked out when you tell them that you have no social media. The follow-up question of, everyone does, you have to, had made me walk out. A company that wants access to my personal family-only social media platforms is not a company I want to work for. I separate my personal and professional life. They have no business knowing about me or my family and anything going on therein. They do not need access to your Facebook, and should they gain it through another employee or other means, I would sue the fucking shit out of them for violating my right to privacy. Unlimited time off means you will never be taking time off ever. Management will judge the hell out of you for attempting to take a mental health day or a vacation. The people who take the least time off will wear it like a badge of honor. The last place I worked like this, the owner would lecture us every year about how he's never taken Thanksgiving or Christmas off, and look how well the company is doing. Then he'd give you the stink eye when you wanted to take off to be with your family for those holidays. In software development, any take-home interview assignment that can't be finished in under 4 hours. Some shadier companies have been caught outsourcing labor for free this way, but even in the much less nefarious scenario where it really is just an evaluation, if a company has so little respect for your work-life balance that they're going to require a day's worth of unpaid labor just to interview, they're probably not going to respect it if they hire you either. Also, too much emphasis on how great their office amenities are often means they expect you not to leave the office. Usually the sweet spot is a decent snack selection and maybe a gym in the building if it's a shared office building. One foosball table or something isn't necessarily a red flag, but odds are nobody uses it. From personal experience coming out of college, mechanical engineering degree, this was hands down red flag galore. This was my second real engineering job interview, so I told myself, see it through because I need the interviewing experience, and they reached out to me for an entry-level design engineering position. They made me wait for 15 minutes in a not heated breezeway in the middle of winter. A receptionist came out 5 minutes into me waiting in the cold and asked, would I need to give a 2-week notice to my current job or can I start this week? I gave a non-answer and thought that was also my invitation in, and she said that the person was not ready yet and I had to continue to wait. When I was finally greeted by the manager I'd work under, he was new to the company. 2 months at the time. He made sure I knew that for some reason. They first asked a standard, tell me about yourself, then pivoted to saying, look, please hear us out before you make your decision. Weird that was not something I mentioned in my get to know me pitch. We do a quick tour, and by quick I mean 2 minutes. No workers looked up from their areas as we passed through, and you could hear a pin drop, it was that silent. Next, the place is old. Inside the work area, everything looked like it was bought in the 80s. The manager casually drops, so when you first pull into the office, leave your cell phone in your car because having it go off at your desk is grounds for termination. If something is that important, give your family the number for the receptionist and they can forward a call to you if you are not busy. Anyway, follow me, the owner wants to meet you. The owner is in his 70s and the son of the founder of the company. His personal story was nice, but after the get to know you stuff, no technical questions, he slides a folder across the table and says, "Quit your job today, start tomorrow, and I'll give you $2,000. Inside is a breakdown of their policies. 2 highlights. Doctor's visits and funerals are unexcused absences unless you take vacation for them. You are not allowed to be more than 15 minutes late twice in a calendar year, or you are subject to termination." And pay, the amount for salary was blank, so I asked about it. He stares down the manager, who looks like he saw a ghost at this point, and asks, "What do you think is fair?" I asked for a market rate for pay, given my education and the position, and they countered with a significantly lower number. More than $25K a year less than my market value ask, saying, "We are glad to pay you that amount at a later date, but you need to go through training and onboarding. While doing that, you aren't actually doing all the responsibilities of this role, and onboarding takes 6 months. So we can negotiate a more reasonable salary then, but for now, this is our offer." I said I understand there are costs for training, but what does that entail to justify the pay? He said to learn the company, you need to start from the bottom. Your first 6 months, you'll be in the warehouse loading and unloading product from semi-trailers. I thought he was joking. He was not. I immediately said, "Thank you, I need to think this over," and walked to the door. The owner half blocks the door and says, "If you leave now, you're ruining your future. Don't you understand this opportunity will set you up for life if you're willing to make sacrifices?" I say, "I'll call you tomorrow," and leave. This entire process lasted 45 minutes on a first interview. I get home and have an email from the owner saying, "How dare I leave the interview? If I had any level of experience, they'd start me closer to my desired pay. I am making the worst decision of my life by not taking this job," etc. I get a phone call about an hour later from the manager saying, "Look, I understand you may have reservations, but if you come in tomorrow, I can give you another $500. I hung up and that was that. This place tried to get me, a recent engineering grad, to take a warehouse job that was pitched as the training program to become an engineer at nearly half the market rate for an engineer out of college. One that said they'd fire you for having a cell phone in the building, and that God forbid you have to go to a funeral, you need to take a vacation day. So, what is a red flag you might not realize? Literally anything I just said. Edit, caught some spelling errors. I once had an interview with a company scheduled at 3. Company door was locked for safety of client, so I stood out there for around 5 minutes knocking and calling the office number. The person who was supposed to interview me finally came out and told me they were heading home for the day and that they would call me the next day. The next day they called and offered me the job, and like an idiot, I accepted it. That level of unprofessionalism was only a soft start to what really went down in that company. During my less than 5 months of working there, 6 of my coworkers quit. When I finally quit and had to sign paperwork, my manager told me their office hours were from 8 to 6 that day. I came to the office at 4, knowing it should not be a busy time. They were already gone for the day. So essentially, management did not keep to their schedule, and they were always hiring due to their crazy turnover rates. Having to take an online IQ test before even being considered for an interview. Backstory. When I moved to Australia, I was looking for work as a language teacher. I went in Monster.com and found an advert saying that they were looking for teachers for gifted children, but that I needed to take an online IQ test to apply. Needed an IQ above 125 to go for an interview. I took the test, sent in my CV and cover letter, and waited. An hour later, I get an email asking to meet at a special cafe in downtown Melbourne the following day. So I go and notice that this building was a Freemason building and that one needed a special pass to get in. There was a little older lady waiting for me in a tacky floral print shirt and a white fisherman's hat. Immediately, she pardoned herself for wearing that hat, explaining that it was lined with aluminum to protect her from the cell phone radiation. I think nothing of it and order a coffee. Off the bat, the old lady tells me about how she has an IQ of 160 and the rarest blood type, similar to that of Tutankhamun. She goes on and on about this for a while and then begins explaining the job. She tells me that, in the beginning, I wouldn't be teaching, but administering tests in schools around Queensland to recruit children to special camps, where then I would be teaching. The whole thing screamed red flags, but I politely listened and got her business card if I ever had further questions. I got a proposal on the spot. I looked at the card and it said, "The Wise Ones." After looking it up, I noticed that it was a cult, similar to that of Universal Medicine. When I was looking for a new job last year, my new interview question was, how did the company respond to COVID-19? And after that, I followed up with, what did the company do when the stay-at-home order was issued? Were employees still compensated or was hazard pay introduced? Maybe that's not entirely applicable, but I figure if a company does right by its staff in the worst times, they'll probably do right by them during the best of times. I ended up declining positions at companies that decided their people shouldn't be put first, and now I work at a fantastic company. Once, I applied for a sales position ad. When I got there were 30 people in the waiting room. Red flag. The interview process took hours and we were interviewed in groups and people were cut as the day went on. Kind of reminded me of a popularity contest. They had no respect for my time. Red flag. I felt so down the rabbit hole at one point that I was just like, I'm just gonna have fun with this and try to win the game. Well, I ended up being chosen and the boss man was like, we usually don't pick women. Red flag. So good for you. You remind me of Natalie Portman. Red flag. Do you have any questions? I was like, yeah, what's the product I'm selling? Yeah, it was door-to-door knife salesman. Red flag, 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 red flag. Duh. My employer is 90 years old, was 84 when I started work. During the interview, she asked me to be referred to by my middle name rather than by my first name because it was also her husband's first name and she didn't want there to be confusion about who was being paged. In hindsight, I consider that a red flag I missed about her ability to manage and lead because this woman cannot handle any deviation from the norm. Any new idea or technology gets shot down because, we've never done it that way before, and she gets theatrically dramatic about any upsets to schedule or routine. Her ability to adapt to changing circumstances has become nearly non-existent, if it was ever present at all. Good green flag is finding out how long the average employee has been around. At my current job as a hospital RN, I was still considered the new kid after 15 years. Most of the nurses on that floor had been there for 20 to 30 years when I got hired. Ask specifically about their real benefits: medical, dental, vision, disability, etc. My employee doesn't pay any different than any other employer, but the benefit details are outstanding. I pay $40 a month for medical insurance, deductible of $200 a year, anything done, labs, imaging, ED, hospitalization, at my hospital is free. They offer good tuition benefits that many take advantage of to climb the career ladder at that hospital. Dental work, not braces, is free. Additional long-term disability is reasonable. Over the year, they have added a great legal plan that covers most things free, if it costs less than $10 a month. Over the years, they have added critical illness insurance, pet insurance, employee discounts for many services, including Verizon. No one comes close to the benefit package they offer. They really want to keep their employees. I've been there 21 years, and like most here, I plan on retiring from them. Find out the real benefits, not the free meals at a cafeteria or a pretty office. I'm an HR exec. Here come the downvotes. Here's a few. Sign-on bonuses. Way more common than normal right now due to shortages, but a lot of times sign-on bonuses mean an employer, is really short and overly desperate to fill positions. Kind of all employers are in that boat right now, though. Oddly inflated advertised compensation. A lot of times if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Employers sometimes include the value of their benefits package and other things in their advertised compensation ranges. High management turnover. If managers and supervisors are rapidly turning over, it's a bad sign. Ask the manager you are interviewing with how long they have been there and how long they have been in that position. Organization size. The larger the size of the organization, the more predictable it is. You'll be able to get more information either online or through folks that worked there. Smaller organizations can be awesome to work for, but sometimes it's hard to figure out what it's like to work there, especially for single-owner businesses. Frequently talking about lofty visions for the future of the company and how they want to share future benefits with current employees without a concrete roadmap for how to get there. I wasted a year burning myself out at my previous job because I took the owner's words at face value. It took me way too long to realize that he was very lazy and had no idea how to reach these lofty goals, but loved to talk about them to motivate his employees. I would bust my ass doing the work that needed to be done to grow the company and have my simple requests for help met with placating words so that I would just shut up and do it myself. To say the owners were blindsided and shocked when I gave my 2 weeks is an understatement. They thought my hard work was a complete buy-in, but didn't ever think a person with half a brain would expect tangible benefits for such hard work within a reasonable amount of time. Do not ever do work outside the scope of your current role in the hope for a future payout. Arbitration agreement. They are asking you to sign away your legal right to a jury trial and instead confining you to a private court-like system that frequently favors employers and will require you to pay both sides' legal expenses when you lose. Any decision is binding and cannot be appealed to any higher court. Arbitration is meant for two equal parties to settle their differences, not for a little employee to take on their big employer for workplace abuses, or a customer in a company for that matter. I was in the final hiring stages of a temp agency once and they asked me to sign one. I refused. I said it indicated that they didn't trust me or knew they were not a good place to work. If the former, they shouldn't hire me. If the latter, I shouldn't work there. It ended up getting shuffled off to their legal department to work out a solution with me. They never contacted me back, and I found work elsewhere. I didn't find this out until after I was hired, but if several people had the job before you within the last year, there might be an issue. This was at an R1 university. I'll just say that their college foosball team in the Southeast is doing very, very well this season. Everything and everyone seemed fine during interviews and on paper, but once I set foot into that office, I began to see the real problems, and mainly management, and that there had been 2 different people in my position within the last 6 months. I was hired in September. I mean, sure, the pandemic didn't help things, but man, middle management made it a toxic workplace. Chances are you will not find these things until you are hired. I did not ask about my predecessors because technically there were none. My position recreated from the ashes of the 2 that previously left. A part of me was also way too excited to start at such a prestigious school, so I had some blinders on myself. If there's a lot of turnover, even if it appears innocent, then there's quite possibly an issue. I interviewed once at a very huge organization that had a site in the town I was living in, and these guys were so proud of the new top-of-the-line facilities. When they took me on a tour, they pointed out the lovely Zen garden area that was made for employees to go unwind and clear their heads. The problem with it was this area was positioned directly across from all the higher-ups' offices. Yeah, no.